Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And I'm Argy.
And this is Zenith, that podcast with vampire sand, because this week we watched Sand.
Written by Tanith Lee.
Directed by Vivian Cousins.
And aired on November 23rd, 1981.
And this one's also written by Tanith Lee, who wrote Sarcophagus.
Right.
She basically wrote this episode for Jacqueline Pearce. And it does seem to me that Servalan gets more screen time in this episode compared with all the other ones that she does. Although I haven't looked up stats about that. And I want to mention this now. We will come up to it, but it's just it's more to do with the writing than anything else. So Stephen Pacey used to be quite fearful of Jacqueline Pearce, who I'm just going to call Jax because apparently everyone did. And so he was quite fearful of her, and she'd say, But Stephen, I'm just the girl next door. And then he would reply, if you were the girl next door, I'd move. And so they had a lot of fun actually delivering those lines in the script, and they're some of my favourite in the series. But it went on a little bit more than that. Stephen was talking at work about how he'd moved into a houseboat and how much he was enjoying it. So Jax rented a houseboat near his mooring. One morning as they were both leaving for work, she ran into him. He was shocked that she had basically become the girl next door. Not long after, he moved.
Nice.
And the most interesting part of that story was that he lived in a houseboat.
Yeah. I've got to apologise to Josette Simon because I said her name incorrectly all the last episode that we taped. So it's Josette, and I know that because I heard her saying it now.
That's okay. I have ruined so many people's names on so many episodes of our podcast that I'm pretty sure there's like a society of people who are just like, man, Dylan hates us because he gets our name wrong every time.
I also dug up a little bit on IMDb, so you take this as you wish. Some people said that is a good source of information, some don't. But apparently Josette Simon believed that the Blake 7 producers used her naivety and lack of confidence to get her to play a quotations, hot exotic warrior woman part that she saw retrospectively as both sexually and racially demeaning. So that's sort of where that came from.
Yeah, you know, I think I've heard that from multiple different sources.
Yeah.
What I've heard is that, you know, when she was, you know, making Blake 7, not the Twitter account making Blake 7, but, you know, when she was when she was on the show, she enjoyed it, but then, you know, like you mentioned, retrospectively, she, you know, looked back and said, like, you know, that wasn't really...
It wasn't so great.
Yeah.
She's had to walk that back a little bit because a lot of fans were really a bit upset and saying, why, you know, that part was so good, da 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 da. And she said, yes, the part was fun, but I would never revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
So she won't be doing, Big Finish or anything like that.
Right. She hasn't been in any audios.
I mean, some actors / actresses just don't like revisiting roles that they've portrayed before. Not necessarily because they're sexist or racist, like she says Dana was. Some actresses just don't like going back to roles.
Yep.
Yeah. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but I think that's something we definitely heard like right at the start of Series C, and something we've been trying to keep in mind as we watch these episodes. At least I have been trying to keep it in mind while we watch these episodes. And
I mentioned it in a letter to you because I was trying to find out why she wasn't doing Big Finish, and I read secondhand someone said, she found the role a bit sexist and racist, like a warrior woman type of role. So, yeah, I just wanted to say there is some supporting evidence for that.
Right.
I wonder if anyone's ever reached out to her about it. I know she's not the most responsive to fans, probably, especially of Blake 7, I think.
Yeah, I don't think she's on social media, so it gets a bit tricky if they're not.
I mean, you can always go through their website and get no responses.
Yeah.
Like we did.
I love start of Series 4, we get to fly over a Ferrero Rocher.
Yeah.
At the beginning, which is supposed to be a planet, but looks a lot like chocolate. Hey, can I say, I always get frustrated at the end of the Zenith podcast because the last two notes never get played, and I'm always there waiting for it to go dun, dun, but just doesn't happen. So I have to hum them myself.
Well, blame Dylan.
That is entirely on me though. That's like, I mean, I know you're kidding, but like that was entirely on me since I was the one who cut the intro and outro music like that.
Yeah, so it's all right. I just hum it myself so everyone else can do that too.
Yeah, but it's just mildly annoying enough to keep Zenith in your mind all day.
We already said this episode. I don't think we did. This episode is written by Tanith Lee, who also wrote Sarcophagus.
Right.
She only wrote those two.
The last episode
I
you
might have
were
already said that,
guest
but
on.
anyway, she basically wrote this episode for Jacqueline Pearce. So there's a lot in it, and I think we start out outside the Scorpio, just like we did. There's a lot of similarities between this and Sarcophagus. So Sarcophagus started outside the Liberated. This starts outside Scorpio, and it has a bit of a mystical vibe to it, just like the start of Sarcophagus had. So we see the planet, really nice model work, I think, of the planet. And it's all covered in this sand, and the sand's blowing, and yeah, it just looks really cool.
Right, and we get sort of this cryptic voiceover, which again kind of mirrors the cryptic, I don't know what you would call it, dance sequence, martial arts sequence at the beginning of Sarcophagus.
Burial. The cryptic burial. Well, then we follow we kind of follow the voiceover to, not inside the Scorpio, actually, to a completely different ship. Somewhere completely different, and it turns out we're following Servalan.
And no one gives a withering look like Jacqueline Pearce.
Right, and we meet Reeve, I think his name is, as well. He's sort of the
Inspector Reeve.
Right, he's the Travis replacement of the week.
Yes.
Like any good Travis replacement,
He gets
bites
killed
the
by
dust.
the end of the episode.
I think they're doing exposition really well in this series lately. So this broadcast transmission is a really nice way to do it.
Yeah, he kind of comes over and he's like, "Are you be watching old films?" And she's like, "No, I'm just trying to figure out what we're looking for."
Right, so the sort of whole setup, I think, is that they are going to investigate what happened to Keller and his group.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is a very nice sort of way of setting up a mystery, a bit like Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
What happened to them? We're going to find out. Good costume work too, I thought. I really like Investigator Reeves' silver suit. Had a lot of detail. And Servalan, her brooch, earrings and gown are extremely pretty, and her silvery blue makeup is very striking. I think they've made her look just gorgeous in this episode.
I agree. And I want to also mention Keller's outfit as being really cool as well, even though he only shows up to die.
Yeah, metallic but flexible. Oh no, that wasn't Keller. That was Reeve.
Yeah, that was Reeve.
My bad.
Keller was wearing the kind of sugar plum colored outfit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So there's mystery all through this one, and obviously the first mystery is what happened to people on Vryn base. But we get other layers of mystery as we go through, which we can talk about when they pop up.
Well, this is definitely the most mystery-esque episode of Blake 7 in a long time.
Yes. The other one was that one early on where they weren't sure who killed someone in that ship.
Right.
In season A. I do not remember the name,
I
but
think it's Mission to Destiny.
Yeah.
And Keon's got it there.
Yeah, this episode seems to draw... sorry, you had something to say, Argy.
no, I know.
Oh, yeah.
You keep going.
This episode seems... I know I've mentioned this short story before, but this episode seems to draw a lot from Ursula K. Le Guin's story, Vaster Than Empires and More Slow, which is... it's sort of an ecological story about I guess a survey team, I think, who visit a sentient planet, and some weird stuff happens. This takes a few cues from that story. So I recommend it.
Interesting.
I mean, I think this whole story is very ecological.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Correct pronunciation pending. Is very ecological in its kind of themes and overarching plot. This initial mystery that kind of gets set up, which they kind of resolve this one later on before they resolve everything else, is that Keller indicates that only him and his female partner / research
Co-worker?
partner / co-worker are the two who
Immune
seem to
this,
be immune.
Right, to this virus that's been killing everyone. He assumes it's a virus.
And really quite intriguing that we find out that she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
I thought. Because it sort of grabs you in, okay, what's going on here? You want to sort of know a bit more.
Yeah. This kind of voiceover / tape that Servalan's watching really effectively establishes, I think, two mysteries. One, which is what's killing everybody, and two, why are these two the only two that are suspected to still be alive? As we find out later on, They've actually been dead for years. Servalan's been a bit slow following up on this.
Now, I like the way Servalan takes down Reeve effortlessly in this. But I've decided I think Tanith Lee has an excellent ear for dialogue. And the line that Servalan uses is, "I'm sure you're accustomed to loneliness, Investigator Reeve. You must be alone such a lot."
Yeah, I think the dialogue in this one...
Roasted.
Oh, okay. No.
Ouch. It's like, ouch. Well, do you have more to say about this part? Because otherwise we'll move on to...
I just wanted to agree. I mean, I think the dialogue in this was great. There were a few instances that kind of annoyed me, like, someone will say something and then someone will just respond with, like, "Is it?" or something like that. And that's like, all right, that's a little...
Mystery building, Keon. Is it? This guy's dead. Is he?
And that was the type of thing, right? But I mean, overall, it was probably the best dialogue we've gotten this season so far, really.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
I agree. I concur. We actually ended up following Servalan for like most of the first part of this episode.
Yeah, this was definitely a Servalan episode, like you mentioned, Argy. Sort of written to Jacqueline Pierce, which
I can't remember any other episode where she's in it so much.
I definitely feel like this is by far her most screen time. I mean, she's arguably the main character of this story, which I don't think you can say about pretty much any other script.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we see her, she definitely bookends it too. We see her, in the first set, and then we see her, she's the last thing we see at the end.
Right.
So,
and just, I mean, right when because Tarrant has a line, and you think that it's going to go into the outro theme right there, but then it goes back to Servalan. That actually really caught me off guard there at the end.
Boom, surprise.
Especially because of how sitcom-y a line it was. You think, all right, that's that's classic Blake 7 ending.
Classic Blake 7 ending. Get you with a sitcom line and hit you with those hard emotional feels as we see Servalan weep over her dead lover.
Yeah, only the second time we've seen her cry.
Yeah, the first time was in Children of Orion, wasn't it?
Children of Orion,
when her babies died.
This one was far more effective.
Yeah, she did this job a bit better, the crying here, I think.
Yeah, I think it's more believable in this context too, possibly. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway,
even though I prefer the Liberator, the Scorpio model work is really good.
Well, we get to see the Scorpio landing sequence in reverse for the fourth time this season, because apparently they spent all their budget filming that sequence. So we see the little platform rotate and Scorpio fly away,
but it's as good as ever. Really like that sequence.
It is noticeable that it's the same exact sequence though every time it comes up, and I'm not going to let them get away with it.
You know why they're doing that though? They wanted to have something like this when the Thunderbirds take off. So every time the Thunderbirds took off, they showed the same sequence of that particular Thunderbird. So that's why it's the same every time.
Yeah, but think about this realistically. Would it really be the same every time?
Yes, down to the millimeter.
Machines. It's all to do with machines.
Machines break. I mean, look at Aurak in this episode. Aurak goes completely screwball.
Oh, I love that scene. We're coming up to it.
Classic Aurak.
So when we get to see inside the Scorpio, we see that a mutoid from Project Avalon has joined the Blake Sevens crew.
Oh
yeah,
no.
we I don't think we forgot or didn't know about that until St. Clinton pointed it out that Sulin played a mutoid before she played Sulin.
I never noticed that.
Very prominently in that episode too, actually. Although she had a thing on her head like an artichoke, so it didn't really look like her.
I never noticed that, so I didn't even know that was a thing till St. Clinton pointed it out.
Yeah, and I'm trying to
another juicy tip. So Glynis Barber and Stephen Pacey actually went out during season D of Blake 7.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, I think...
Who's told us that?
Someone told us about
Someone
that.
Told
it might
us
have been
that.
you, but I'm not sure, 100% sure.
Feels like all our regular correspondents now are fighting to be the first to tell us some juicy new tidbit about Blake 7. Everybody's like, no, I gotta be first.
I just say bullshit that I've thought of that I think amuses me, and I don't care if it amuses anyone else. Tough.
Tough.
Avon hasn't kissed Sulin yet.
No,
However,
but now
she has
Servalan
been
has
kissed.
kissed Tarrant. So
Yes.
who
Well-
kissed Sulin?
The guy that she was with to start
Dorian.
with. Dorian, yes. So another little stat. Jenna is the only recurring cast member who was never kissed on screen.
Wow, that actually surprises
Yeah,
me.
that's a pretty big surprise considering.
Gan.
Wait,
For some reason, I'm not imagining Gan getting kissed
who
on
did
screen.
Gan kiss?
Oh, maybe it's wrong.
Who did
No,
Gan
I don't
kiss?
remember. I don't remember Gan kissing anyone either. Maybe it meant female. It might
Yeah,
have
maybe it
meant
meant female.
Yeah, I think it was
Possibly.
female cast member. Because Callie gets kissed by Avon, Dana
Right.
gets kissed by Avon and Tarrant. And also Servalan was the other one that's immune. Oh no, that's a bit later. Sorry. Yeah, so Servalan got kissed, Callie got kissed, Sulin got kissed, Dana got kissed. So those are all the main ones.
Seems to be a weird love pentagon going on in the Scorpio crew. Some sort of
It's
free
also-
love tribune. Yeah.
It's the kiss of death too, because anyone who Avon kisses dies.
Uh-oh.
Except again for Servalan.
Uh-oh.
However, we never see Servalan in the final episode, so yeah, she might be dead. Oh, sorry, spoilers. I should have said.
She might be
I already knew about that. I think Dylan is just like, damn.
We're getting to that point in the season. So,
Yeah, I can't believe we're almost there.
Sulin's hairstyle looks fantastic in this episode. So cool.
Yeah, I tried thinking of how to describe it, and I just completely blanked. So I'm gonna leave that one
It's
to you guys.
braids. It's
Yeah,
a
but-
braid.
It was a braid on one side that's sort of just like, I guess, clipped over the top of her head. I
Yeah.
don't know what you would call that.
Fancy. That's what you would call it.
Now listen, you're going down to a planet covered entirely by sand. You know you have to walk 5 miles. What do you choose to wear? Obviously, a flowing, glittery evening gown and stiletto shoes.
Well, the thing is when they first get down to the planet, Servalan, or they were originally planning to land closer to their destination, then Servalan gets mad at, gosh, I forgot his name, the pilot guy.
Chazgo.
Yeah, Chazgo. She gets mad that he wasn't able to navigate properly or whatever. The sand blew him off course.
Classic sand.
So yeah.
Well, they
Chaddy
kinda
has one
land-
pair of shoes, apparently.
They kind of land in what seems to be a cave of some sort. It almost seems like.
Yeah, this planet is really cool. There seems to be a lot of cave systems and chasms and stuff like that.
And a constant storm overhead that's never at the point where it's gonna rain.
Yeah, well, the sand's ever present throughout the episode, which I liked too. And it buries the ship. It falls on Servalan and her party's heads when they
The sand
first
is
get
also
down to the
green,
planet.
we should note.
Yes. And it swallows people whole as well. We get to see one of the guards get swallowed whole by the sand.
Surprised we haven't made any Tatooine/young Anakin jokes yet. Sand.
Well,
make
now
one
we
there.
can't because you've
No,
ruined the punchline
no,
before it
no.
comes.
There's another good bit of dialogue too when they're sort of all settling down for the night where Servalan says, "There are no women like me. I am unique. That makes me rather dangerous."
And then Inspector Reeves just like, I'm gonna go sleep over here.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like how much Reeve is sort of bullied in these scenes.
Yeah, you get the feeling he's not a nice guy, so you kind of don't feel too sad for him.
No,
No.
I just took pleasure from his pain, I guess.
I was surprised Reeve was the one to figure out that Sleer was Servalan.
Yeah, because we should probably mention that he kind of confronts Servalan, when she says that line about no one being like her. He's like, well, yeah, I know that because you're Servalan, aren't you? And she's like,
She's not phased by it. She kind of keeps her cool, and Reeve kind of.
Reeve then points out that Best Servalan made a massive oversight because Reeve was invited to an event when the Federation was a thing in which Servalan was there, and he implies that she was the one who invited him, but they never met in person.
Do you think that was rumors of death?
Possibly.
That's what sprang to my mind. Yeah, the jig's certainly up for Servalan.
Well, not anymore. Reeve eats it. So.
I found some information on this too, that Sutherland becomes Slee because Jax was actually hospitalised after Series 3, and it was thought that she wouldn't return to the series. So Slee was to have actually been played by an actor. When it turned out that Jax was okay to continue her role, they decided to keep the Slee moniker because by that stage the Federation considered her to be dead, or Sutherland to be dead. So that's how that all came about.
Yeah, she kind of explains it in this episode to Tarrant. She says that the presidency was usurped from right under her.
Right. And I think we heard at one point that Jacqueline Pierce, was well enough, I guess, to be a part of Series D, but still wasn't in the best of health during all of this, which kind of explains episodes like Animals, where she's not.
Yeah, I was going to say Animals was the main one where we heard that, I think, because it seemed like she was way out of it during that episode.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, most of the people were way out of that one, so...
Oh, man. We agreed never to talk about that again.
Oh, bummer. Too late.
Now I'm going to have to take another shower after this.
Yeah, well, we just can't let them live it down. We can't let them forget that Animals exists.
Do you like how in earlier episodes of Blake 7, they just stood still after teleporting down to a planet? But as time went on, they do this dramatic look around with guns pointed.
Is that a change that happened when they switched to the Scorpio?
No,
before
that change happened before, and I remember reading somewhere, and I don't remember where it was. I think it was actually on Making Blake 7, where he talked about how the person who did the teleporter effect got so good at it by the end of Series A that he was able to do it while people were moving, and then in my mind, that kind of justified to me why they started moving more by the end of the season, was because the guy who did the effect was actually was good enough to actually make it so that they could move around while it was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it does work from a story perspective as well, because when they first start using the teleporter, then none of them are used to the teleporter.
Right.
So you'd think that they can now plan, okay, when we're down, quickly check our surroundings. But I think there's an implied thing as well that maybe they haven't done that one or two times in the past and been, sprung upon by someone waiting for them, or, accidentally teleported down into a group of people who are hostile.
Horizon. They just kept doing it. But yeah, that definitely makes sense. Speaking of teleporting, the Liberator crew is discussing what to... Sorry, I knew I was going to do that as soon as...
Liberator crew.
They're still the Liberator crew to me.
Yeah, they are.
Even though the crew is pretty different from the original crew, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
Dana joined in Series C, Tarrant joined in Series C, and Sulin joined in Series D.
Yeah,
only
Villa and Avon are
Villa
the only
left.
The only
Callie
OG members left.
No, don't talk about Callie eating it. I'll have to go back to sulking.
We have to talk about Callie because Villa finally gets his moment where he gets to mourn her death for all of
by drinking again.
All of 2 minutes where he gets smashed drunk in doing so.
But what I thought,
not there quite yet, because we've got Sand creeping up on Chesgo.
Right.
That doesn't really go
anywhere.
But what I thought was funny is that the Liberator, God, I did it again. The Scorpio crew are discussing what to do, and Avon is like, well, we don't know what this thing is, but damned if I'm going to let Servalan have it.
Well, they take a vote because Avon's like, let's take a vote. Servalan's going there right now. Should we go there, yes or no? And everyone's like, yes?
Everyone just feels they're under pressure to say yes because Avon's asking.
Well, someone says something like that later on. I think it's Dana. She says, well, how could we refuse when you're the alpha male, Avon?
Yes, classic.
Well, she's poking fun at him, when he explains that the sand kept him alive because he was the dominant member.
And that actually is why the sand's important creeping up on Chesgo, because that's how the sand finds out there's another male.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from Tarrant. When all the other males are killed.
Well, Tarrant and Villa beam down, and Tarrant and Dana.
Before that, there's a really nice thing where Villa and Avon are both horrified when Ulrak said that he loves them.
Oh, yeah.
Ulrak is kind of
on the
going
fritz.
crazy.
Yes.
I mean, you find out why later on, but nobody puts the connection together on the Scorpio crew, but it's because Ulrak's reading off all of the messages that Keller left for Servalan.
But it's really funny when he says, I love you to Avon. He's like, turn it off.
Last thing he wants to hear. I
Oh,
can't
except the
believe
sequence of events was Avon goes, turn it off, and then Aurek goes, but I love you, and he's like, turn it off now!
I can't believe I didn't get it was living sand until I saw it move. I was like, man, I can't believe that I didn't get that.
It's
I don't know.
not that obvious, I think, like that it's the sand that's killing them, because they really play it up like it's a virus for a lot of it. There's also a thing where like technology doesn't work right on the planet, Vern.
Right,
Yeah,
I
I
forgot
like
to mention
that. I
it's
thought that was
called Vern.
clever.
Vern, like Jules Verne. I'm sure that's intentional.
Or like the color green.
I like the color green, yeah. What language would that be?
Just an Indo. I mean, it wouldn't be like a particular language, I think, but it would just be an Indo-European like thing that, like, all right, Vern green.
Anyway, technology doesn't work quite right, which is why everybody's got like classic, like bullet-powered guns. I think they call them percussion guns.
Yeah.
So they're not firing laser bolts on this planet. It's all about them bullets.
There's this weird thing where Dana kind of implies that she could have brought more bullets, but she only brought 4 because there were only 4, enemy people down there, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to waste any or whatever."
Only for her to immediately get shot in the arm by Inspector Reeve.
Right.
I know. This is a bit. Yeah, I found this a bit silly.
Well, Reeve's like, it seems like he's hallucinating for a second. I was like, is this the virus? Is it making him hallucinate? And he's like, there's someone up on the ridge. And he just fires kind of blindly. And then Dana's like, ah! Tarrant's like, well, you're hit. You're not allowed to continue the mission anymore, Dana.
Yeah, but the way they shot all of this was so strange. This was the one instance of like really weird directing.
I agree, because I thought that like Sutherland and her group were in a cave, and then I guess Dana and Tarrant were on some sort of ridge, and I was like kind of uncertain about how they got up there, and there was something
they weren't
about
in a cave. They were sleeping outside during the night, so they were still outside.
Gotcha. I mean, because there was this other thing like. There was this other thing where they couldn't like teleport them too close to Sutherland's ship because of the the interference with the storm and the technology not working right. But then they could just immediately beam Dana out like right there and then. And, yeah. Anyway.
It's like all the times when the sonic screwdriver can fix everything except the things it can't.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like that. So you can teleport anyone anywhere except when you can't.
And you can teleport anyone out of anywhere with no repercussions because apparently
That's what they do.
that's what they do.
Under duress from not duress, but under protest from Dana, she's like, "No, I don't want to go, don't." And then she gets teleported back.
And then
up.
Tarrant says some snarky line like, well, I guess you didn't have a choice or something like that.
God, Tarrant was such a
Dweeb.
yeah, like, oh man, Tarrant in this episode.
I can think of stronger language than that.
Pretentious.
I won't use it. Pretentious, that's a good one. Arrogant.
Arrogant. We've got to stick to the family-friendly words, Argy.
I know. I am sticking to them. Yeah, but he wasn't. I hated that bit, to be honest, when he just decided, no, I know it's better for you. You're going back up.
Yeah, that.
I mean, this is the start of Tarrant being,
The start of Tarrant being what?
a not good member of the crew. I don't know what family-friendly word to use.
I feel like you know what's coming, and you're dancing around it not to spoil it now.
It's actually not
But
the
can we
start of
just
it.
say he still looks pretty? That's all I really care about. That's all I need for my Tarrants. I just need them to be pretty.
I don't forgive him for any of this.
Are you preemptively not forgiving him for things he hasn't done yet, or are you just not forgiving him for being a little to Dana?
No, but I mean, I say this was the start of it, but this really isn't the start of it. Harvest of Kairos was the start of Tarrant's problems, or Tarrant causing problems. Let's put it that
Well, that's
way.
because in Harvest of Kairos, they were like, we're going to let Tarrant pilot the ship, and then at the end of the episode, I was like, let's never do that again.
Yes.
Even in the
makes it
simulator
insecure, doesn't
last
it?
week for games, he like gets his engine blown out in the simulator.
Yeah, he doesn't. And then they say, "Are you going to keep going around the planet or land?" There's more points for landing, and he says, "Oh, I'll just keep going around the planet."
Doesn't know how to land, maybe. But anyway,
I do like Serverland saying to him, "What fascinating violence!"
Yeah,
that's a lovely.
That's pretty much right now because Tarrant goes wandering off and he confronts Reeve, who's separated from Servalan.
Worst shootout ever.
I really liked it.
Fight.
No, it wasn't too bad.
Fight me,
This is
IRL.
Chris Boucher again. He loves westerns, so anytime he can put something to do with
Chris
westerns
Boucher's
in
not
there.
the only one who likes westerns on this production team.
No, that's why.
Oh, no.
That's
True.
why he and Paul Darrow sort of bonded. I read is over their love of westerns.
And that's why Paul Darrow kept holding his gun like a 6-shooter.
Yeah, he's still doing it this season. Even
But it's more like a 6-shooter this season, so it'd be hard not to.
Yeah, I was gonna say like if I feel like if I had those guns that they have this season, I would. It would be really hard not to hold it like a 6-shooter, as I guess what I'm trying to say there.
You know, I think if I hadn't seen the Liberator guns, I probably would have gone, oh, these guns are so cool, Scorpion guns or Scorpio. But I think after seeing the Liberator guns and how different they were, these ones feel a little bit like second rate.
Well, that's because they are second rate.
Yeah. Although the teleport bracelets I really like. I think they look really good.
Yeah, I agree. The new teleport bases are great. And I mean, there's a lot of wasted potential with these guns that I can already tell is never going to go anywhere. Because in the first episode, Dana was like fascinated by these guns. Because she's like, oh, you can change out the type of like bullets it fires.
Yeah, there's all kinds of customizations you can make in Rescue that never get touched on again.
And this is like the first time that they actually... This is the second time, actually, I think they actually brought up them changing the bullets. Because she's like, wow, it's been a while since I used these percussion bullets. And then there was like the trank bullets they used in the one episode. And then that's it. That's like all they've done with those interchangeable energy cartridges that they like made a huge point of showing in Rescue.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if you thought they were using a certain type of bullet in the last episode, which I won't talk about too much. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you thought that happened.
I mean, but can you imagine if like this episode was done with the Liberator guns? They'd be people on the Liberator would be completely screwed because guns don't work on Verns. So
Maybe the Liberator would have been
right.
powerful enough to withstand the sandstorm.
the Liberator wasn't powerful enough to withstand goo in space.
Slime trademark. I like this printout on when they get down to the base. So Tarrant and her Servalan have hooked up, agreed to a truce.
Hooked up in more ways than one.
Well, not quite yet, but yeah, that's about to happen. So we're getting this computer readout. Perhaps we will be lovers for a long while, and it really upsets Servalan. And it also makes her realise that Don Keller's dead, and that in turn also has a big impact on her. She's just bereft.
Well, there's this nice scene between the two of them where Tarrant's like, I could just kill you right now, 3 feet away, be pretty effective. And she's like, well, how about 1 inch away? You can just kill me right now, or we could, do a truce. And then Tarrant says something like, what, until you find a blunt instrument to bash my head with? She's like, no, a truce.
Well, there's also this line here where Servalan tells Tarrant that he just killed someone who was trying to kill her, and he was like, "Oh darn, everyone gets one
Really bad mistake, I think.
And I was like, "All right, Tarrant, when did you use yours? Harvest of Kairos?"
Right, so we jump back up to the Scorpio, and interestingly enough, Sulin references Tanith Lee's earlier episode, Sarcophagus.
I made a note of this.
Yeah. And she mentions Kelly, so I might need to go back to sulking.
Well, then Villa's like, well, what would you know about Callie anyway? And then he walks over to the stairs, I guess, and sits down with his wine, I guess.
Sand. It's wine in the sand.
Wine in the
in
sand.
more ways than one.
The Liberator was destroyed. Kelly died, but Kelly died due to Avon's kiss of death, you see.
Ah. I see.
Now we know who's really behind all of this.
Avon's master plan is just kill everybody who's working for him. All his
Avon
friends.
fell in love with the Liberator too, I would say. So that's another
Avon's
kiss
fell
of
in
death.
love with Orak too.
Ooh, does he make it through? I can't remember. Green Sand's stalking Villa by this stage, which is why he stops making sense.
Right, Dana brings it back in her boots or whatever.
Thanks, Dana. Actually, no, thanks, Tarrant.
Yeah, Tarrant, yeah.
That one's on Tarrant.
Everything that went wrong for them in this episode was Tarrant's fault.
Much like Harvest of Kairos.
Yeah.
However, Servalan tells him, you are both resourceful and decorative. So she gets it.
Decorative vegetable?
So say we should name our website Decorative Tarrant.
No.
I mean,
there's a meme of people saying 101 things you can do with a dead Tarrant.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and it's stuff like take his skull, turn it upside down, use it as an ashtray.
Well, that's really morbid.
Hat stand, all that kind of stuff.
Well, Tarrant's had the best chance of anyone to kill Servalan. He's literally got the gun an inch from her head, and I just believes her when she says there's there for a truce. I mean, how hard would it be to just pull the trigger, put a bullet through Servalan's skull, and be like, all right, Scorpio, beam me up, I just killed Servalan.
Exactly. There's absolutely no excuse not to kill Servalan here. He would be the hero of the entire crew if he did this.
Yeah, he would literally be a king.
He would be
if he did
redeemed
this.
in all of their eyes.
I mean, how angry is Dana later when she finds out that
furious.
he could have done that? Yeah.
Furious.
Not just her, actually. They're all pretty upset with him.
And he didn't have to tell them either. He's like, by the way, guys, I gotta come clean.
That was the other
Servalan.
That was the other thing. He
That's
said,
what I
like,
was thinking, yeah.
instead of saving his own skin and not telling them that it was Servalan and just being like, it was just someone I never saw, he like willingly invites their wrath upon him by being like, yeah, I just let Servalan live.
God. Tarrant is such
That's
a
because he's a little boy who's like, yeah, I was with a real woman then. I reckon.
And everyone else is like, Tarrant, you idiots.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, now that you mention it, there is a sense of like, yeah, you know that woman I was talking about, who I made out with, was Servalan.
Yeah, and Avon's like, I've done that.
Yeah. And you can imagine them later, Tarrant going, yeah, but you only kissed her, mate. I actually slept with her.
Yeah, and then Avon would be like, well, at least I tried to kill her. And then Tarrant would go and sulk in his corner. He'd be like, well, I guess you got me there.
We get this lovely scene now. Oh, Tarrant, I'm just the girl next door. If you were the girl next door, I'd move. Where would you move to, Tarrant? Next door. Brilliant.
Yeah, I really
so
like
good.
that. Especially now knowing that it was a real life thing that they sort of wrote into the script and expanded on.
Yeah, I thought that line was great, although I was wondering about the logistics from moving from next door to next door, but you know.
I thought the last line was just so clever. And again, Tanith Lee, hats off.
Yeah, yep. I agree. I mean, a lot of the dialogue in the story is just fantastic in my opinion, so.
Okay, so we're back on Scorpio and Avon's mucking around with the probability square.
Oh, because they turned
Aurak off.
And he tries to explain this probability square to Dana, and Dana's like, I get it. And I'm just sitting there like, well, I don't. Can you go through that again? Because, what?
Man, what was it? Okay, so it's a square. It's like a, 4x4 type thing?
No, a lot bigger than 4x4. It was like, he had 4x4 tiles, but the actual board he was working on was bigger.
That's what I meant, the tiles. So each tile has, I'm forgetting what it was.
Just things like food, water, oxygen.
No, every tile has a fact, information that leads to those facts, and implications of those facts, and you move them around until you find a pattern. And it's supposed to mimic, I guess, Aurak's functions. But this was really interesting to me. I really liked this scene because in this moment, Avon, after turning the computers off, the computers don't even work, so they turn them off. But Avon finds that, I guess, information from the computer is more valid than any information that they could, I guess, deduce. So he starts using this square with limited information on it. And this is interesting. This goes back to, and maybe I'm just referencing this because I've been reading a lot of it lately, but back in the it's really the 18th century, there's this shift, and you can see it in the writing, both scientific writing and fiction from the period of like, this is where the shift really takes place, where like if a human and a machine say something different, then the machine's right and not the human. And this, I'm going to touch back on this later because Tarrant also has something to do with this in a really stupid Tarrant-ish way, but yeah.
Classic. I mean, in my opinion, this scene was just reinforcing what I was theorizing last week in Aurak becoming a mirror to Avon.
Yeah.
And this scene kind of shows that the opposite is also happening, in that Avon is becoming a mirror to Aurak, where here he's basically duplicating Aurak's functions while Aurak is off, performing Aurak's duty for the crew.
Right.
When Aurak is off. basically, in a way, becoming more like Aurak, this machine that he allegedly hates. But I don't think so.
Well, Dana says you're playing Aurak.
Yeah, and he says,
Right.
"Yep, guess I am."
I liked it too. There is to explain to people this in the more simplistic terms. The most practical application of this is a thing called a Punnett square. And I used to work in an animal lab, and we would use it to work out the probability of offspring inheriting a particular genotype, particularly such as a recessive gene. So you would put A, B, C across the top, and then down the left-hand side you'd write X, Y, Z, and then you'd see, oh, sorry, no, I've done that wrong. You'd write X and Y up the top, X and Y down the side, and the Y was the recessive gene. So then you see where they all intersect. So you end up with one XX, two XYs, and one YY. So you'd know you had a quarter of a probability of getting a mouse with that double Y genotype.
Yeah, I think I remember this from like high school
Biology.
bio or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've done Punnett squares. We used
Yeah,
to
I
do them
forgot
for
what they
eye
were called.
color in high school.
Yes, well, that's a recessive gene. Well,
Right.
some of the eye colours are recessive. So, yeah.
I think blue is recessive. I think green is probably recessive as well.
Yeah.
Good old brown is dominant. Hell yeah.
So we get another reference to Callie, so I can sulk again. Villa asked who cared about Callie, and my response to that is Argy cared about Callie. That's who. I just have to comfort myself with the fact that at least Dana's still in it. She's cool.
Comfort yourself with at least Villa being torn up about Callie's death.
Yeah,
Visibly
that's right.
torn up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I'm not. I mean, Callie's one of, if not my favorite character on the show. I'm surprised that I haven't been as torn up about her death as I have about Gan's death.
Because Gan became like a meme almost on this podcast. I mean, it's true.
Yeah, it is. There's no denying that.
I mean, Gan even inspired on your podcast the meme, "What would Blake do?"
Yeah. Gan
God, you're
gave
right.
us What Would Blake Do,
Oh,
so
God.
in reality, Gan may have
Talk
contributed.
about DNA.
Yeah, I was going to
Gan is in the DNA of Zenith.
Gan may not have contributed much to Blake 7, but he's a vital part of Zenith.
I don't know how
I
I
didn't
feel
really
about
get
that.
sad when Gan died, to be honest. And I actually didn't get sad when Callie died. I was more pissed off than anything because I thought, A, that was the stupidest death, just her shouting out Blake, and B, you know,
I beg to differ. You could go dumber than that.
Oh, well, yeah. But yeah, just not having the character around, I was a bit annoyed by. But episodes like this make me get over it a bit because I like this episode.
Man, why did we never think to do a What Would Callie Do? Why didn't that ever cross our minds?
Because we were trying to do something different every season.
I guess.
That would have just been What Would Blake Do, but with
a psychic.
And it would just be what did Sue Lin do this week? That's what Callie would do.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
pretty
guess you're
much. Also, I think it's much funnier to do What Would Blake Do anyway because he was a bit of a buffhead, whereas Callie's not so much of a buffhead.
Yeah, Callie actually had her wits about her.
I'm surprised how many Blake sympathizers there are out there, you know, in online communities and whatever.
I'm not.
No, I'm not either.
That wish Blake was back on the show at this point.
Yeah, or just, you know, are totally on board with Blake's schemes.
Oh, I didn't mind him, but again, you got that problem where he's very cute. So, you know, if I'm watching cute boys run around and do stuff on screen, then I'm pretty happy.
I mean, I liked Blake just because I liked seeing the crew go along with this madman, not realizing that he was a madman. It was like almost this investigation into what makes people follow these charismatic leaders. I mean, Blake was, if you think about it, basically a cult leader, right?
yeah.
He promised all of them, like, riches and the downfall of the Federation, and then asked them to do all these, like, if you looked at it from an outside perspective, all these things that are, like, pretty irrational and crazy and don't seem like they'd really get you to your goal, but and all the people that like bought into it.
Like, he did get questioned by Avon and Villa quite a bit as to, you know, whether these things were smart to do.
But then you always had Jenna and Gan right by his side to do
back
his
him
bidding.
up. Yeah.
And Callie a lot as well because she was interested in taking down the Federation.
Good old Blake, our favorite cult leader.
So back to Sand. We're still getting elements of mystery throughout the episode, even after the initial message from Don Keller. And we get this really interesting little talk. So Sue Lynn hints at some of the mystery elements. And as Dana points out, she gets a handy thunderclap. And Tarrant, at this stage, starts to talk about all the things he and Servalan know. And so everyone is doing like Avon and trying to work through the puzzle, almost like it's an Agatha Christie plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think eventually, well, they find this food machine, I guess, and use it. But eventually Tarrant and Servalan,
the TARDIS food machine.
yeah, come across Keller's body.
Well, Tarrant thinks he's alive.
Right.
But then Servalan's like, he's dead. Remarkably well-preserved body.
Yeah, his body's still warm, still flexible. Metallic but flexible. No.
Dead but flexible. Well, because it's implied he's been dead for at least a while now.
Yeah, for 5 years. But the sand, as Tarrant works out, pretty much now has kept him alive. Or not alive, but, in a alive
Well, they've kept
state,
the
or they
meat.
They
preserved the meat, basically.
Yeah, vampire sand. I love that idea.
Well, he hasn't quite pieced that together just yet, because now he has this kind of... This was a line that made me groan, because it just seemed like really forced. Because Tarrant picks up this glass cube, and he's like, it says natural earth spring water, and he hands it to Servalan, and he's like, better drink it, you might never see earth again. He says something like, natural spring water encased in glass, and I was like, that sounds so, like, contrived.
It's an ornamental thing, right? Like it's water in a glass cube.
No, my problem's not with the water in the glass cube. That I was just like, cool, sci-fi concept. No, just Tarrant's like delivery of the line, and the line itself just felt very like contrived and forced.
Wasn't this after they get, quote, snowed in, unquote, sanded in, I guess?
Yes, but before he figures out that it's vampire sand.
Yeah. I think he's just saying that there's no way out.
Yeah, in a really contrived way.
And we find out why Servalan's upset about Don Keller, because he was her lover until Power became her lover.
Right, the episode
Which
Power.
is a nice
I love that
line.
episode. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
And after Tarrant gives her the water, Tarrant gets on with making breeding stock.
I don't know if it's ever explicitly stated that's what happened. However, the evidence is overwhelming.
Yeah, it's pretty heavily implied, I think.
Well, we don't know if Servalan... There's indication at the end, sort of, and we'll get there, but we don't know for sure whether Servalan is telling the truth here. There's indication at the end that she probably is, but maybe not to the full extent that she says.
It'd be kind of weird for her to sleep with Tarrant if she wasn't. I feel
I
like.
agree that we don't really know about this, whether Don Keller's stuff is true, but I also agree that at the end it becomes fairly clear.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's got no real reason to talk about him at the end.
Right.
And she's talking to herself as well, so she's not doing, explaining it to anyone else. So
right.
I got the feeling that he was her lover at one stage. Also, she got really upset when the computer printout started saying, and I've got it back in my notes, perhaps we will be lovers for a long while. That really upset her.
Right.
Right. Yes, the evidence is pretty overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
That she at least, if wasn't his lover, which is also probably pretty likely, at least knew him.
Right.
Yeah.
She says she was 18 when she fell in love with him, which I just want to point out.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. I thought, I chuckled when I heard the line because Blake Seven has a history of romance being started really young. But just that, in my mind, I never thought of Servalan having a past. And all of a sudden, he's like, I was 18. And I was like, wait a minute. That's a good point.
Well, Servalan also had that past of how she rose to power in the Federation, which was in the one where Gan died. I forgot what that one was called.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like you never really think of these characters like having a childhood and having their first love and having their, I don't know, first experiences,
Or just having a life outside of what we see on
having
screen.
Having a life outside of controlling a dystopian empire
like
hell-bent on killing people.
Humorously, last week, Avon was just like a corporate dude before all of this.
Yes.
I'd like to see just a season of episodes where every episode just focuses on one character when they were like 10. And we just see everybody's childhood for one episode.
No, you got to do two. One where they're like 10 and one where they're, I don't know, like 25 or something like that.
You just do it in one episode since I feel like you wouldn't have enough to do in 10.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, some of the Big Finish stuff does go back into their past.
Oh boy.
Voices from the past.
That could be done really well. Wow. That could be done really well or really poorly and pretty much never in between.
I think Pressure Point was where Gan died.
Yes, yep. Pressure Point was it. Where Servalan threw What's-Her-Face totally under the bus to rise to power. But this is where Tarrant, I think, sort of...
I have to go back and watch it. Yep.
Yeah, Tarrant sort of pieces together or comes up with a theory as to what's going on.
Yeah, because he sees... Okay, Servalan cries, and one of her tears apparently does this to the sand. However, she cries before they kind of get in bed together, which makes me wonder if Tarrant knew what was going on before they like got in bed together and like just kept it from her for like a while.
Well, wasn't the sequence of events, like Tarrant explains this, they have their dinner / whatever it is, and then, after the next morning, they say, is when all the rest of this stuff
But
happens.
I mean, like, Tarrant and Servalan have this whole moment of connection because, like, Servalan and Tarrant both think there's no way out, but Tarrant says that Servalan's tear dissolved the sand, and that's how he realized that there was a way out. But she cried, like, before they did anything that evening together. Like,
oh, yeah.
So I was, like, wondering if he, like, intentionally withheld this information
Tarrant,
for a little bit.
He's pretty slow. He's not a villain-level genius.
He's not stupid. He knows what he's doing.
I mean, I'm not going to say he's a genius, but let's be honest. Yeah, like Argy said, I think he knew what he was doing here.
Maybe. Well, here's the moment where Tarrant sort of becomes a foil to Avon in a way, in that he has this really, I don't know, I guess, we call this an ecological story, so yeah, I guess we can say it, anthropocentric view here. He just says, this is a what-if scenario, but he just says, what if the sand is doing this to us? What if it's sentient in some way, and what if it's taking the most logical course of action, which is to keep one man and one woman alive, and that's why, it killed everyone else, and that's why it kept Keller and what's-her-name alive as well.
And then killed
Avon,
Keller
right?
when his co-worker killed herself because she couldn't bear to be stuck on this planet.
Right. And it's interesting here, he uses the word logic to describe all this, or he puts that word here, he I guess, applies that word to the sand, because, the logic, the sort of root of that means word, right? Like, or language. And he's applying this to this being, I guess, that couldn't possibly use language in the human sense.
Right.
So I don't know. Whereas Avon, I guess, takes out the human element, or at least tries to. Tarrant maybe extends it to other beings in ways that maybe shouldn't be doing. I don't know. And it's interesting how Servalan then, right after that, says that she fell in love with power, right? She moved from being in love with a human being to a concept, or moved from being in love with something concrete to something abstract. I don't have anything else to say about that. I just think it's all sort of interesting.
I think that sand is having a big impact on how people are acting, and you can see this with Villa and what the sand's making him actually do. So he's not acting exactly like Villa would act. And so I think there's an implication that Tarrant and Servalan get into bed rather fast without thinking things through, because the sand's actually altered their thinking a little bit.
Well, also, nobody's really thinking straight when they're horny, so...
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's an effect of the sand.
It just makes you really horny?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I think that's exactly what's going on. It's taking your base urges and amplifying them.
Potentially, because there is a line, where Villa says something, when Dana says something about Callie, and Villa says, like, I used to like you, and Avon says, you still like her, now go over there and sit down.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you talk about base urges, what happens to Villa right as soon as he comes into contact with the sand, right? He wants to drink, and, what do Tarrant and Servalan also do is that they sit down and eat a meal,
Mm-hmm. It's interesting what really bothered me actually about this explanation that it keeps 2 people alive was like, well, then why didn't it kill Servalan's pilot? As soon as Tarrant...
It was hedging its bets.
Well, as soon as Tarrant landed, it should have killed the pilot because it intentionally trapped Servalan and Tarrant together in that room, so it wasn't like the pilot was ever going to be able to make it to Servalan because the sand itself trapped Servalan and Tarrant, so I was starting to wonder, well, why didn't it just kill the pilot?
Yeah, and what they kind of explain this at the end, I think, is that it tried to, but it was just a minimal amount, so he just brushed it outside. I think he says that near the end. Pretty sure. Also,
maybe it's not sure. Maybe it thinks, well, Tarrant's got the girl, but the pilot's actually got sand away from the ship, so I'm not sure who's the alpha male.
Yeah, maybe. Meanwhile, Avon has figured all this out from like very minimal information. You just wait a minute. I haven't
it's from
exact right
probability square.
Oh yeah, right.
He kind of just chucks the water on the sand. He's like, see? Figured it out. And everyone's like, wow, let's go. And then he says, yeah, I'm the alpha male, Villa. Sorry. And Villa's like...
Villa's just like, I'm dying. What's
I don't care. Just save me.
I hate the Scorpio flight deck. The Liberators felt so cavernous by contrast.
The bridge?
Everything seemed
Thank
You're
you.
with Dylan.
Thank you, Argy. You're with me. I knew I wasn't alone in this.
Yeah. I just don't like it. It's all cramped and...
That's exactly what I said. Thank
doesn't look anywhere near as cool.
No, it's you two against the world.
It's us 2 versus you 2 right now. It's 2-2 if you really think about it. You think about all the people who've been on this podcast. It's 2-2 right now.
Think about all the people on on Twitter who have been like, "Yeah, I loved the Scorpio flight deck."
What about all the people who were like, "Yeah, I hated the Scorpio flight deck"?
Yeah, I haven't really seen many of those people.
We'll see. So far, we're 2 for 2. 2-2.
I'll put up a poll on Twitter. Actually,
the teleport era is not as fun. The
I like Slave though.
Annoying.
Slave's design. I'll give them points for that one.
And also, the bit where they sort of chill out on the Liberator and the bit where they chill out on Scorpio, they could all sit around on the Liberator one, but really there's only those 2 lounge chairs on the Scorpio.
Yeah, those lounge chairs look like an afterthought because I don't remember them being there in Rescue, and I think it was later on they're like, shoot, we got to put a lounge area like we had on the Liberator.
I think they were put there to get the young ones able to split them up a bit more.
I do like the Liberator a lot more than the Scorpio, don't get me wrong. I just think the Scorpio is good as well.
Well, opinions can be wrong.
As we found out like a month ago.
When I don't even remember the context that was in.
Me neither.
Anymore.
It was on Trust Your Doctor. We found it out. Opinions can be wrong.
Where are we? Still on the Scorpio?
Well, yeah, Avon figures it out, and he's like, "We've got to make it rain."
He enacts this plan.
This is such a freaking insane plan.
This is a Blake plan. Let's be
this
real.
is a plan that has no basis in science, logic, emotion, or anything you could think of. There's no basis for anything in this plan.
I think he just wants to get into a situation that could result in his death.
You think Avon just has like a death wish?
I think he just wants to live on the edge.
He's crazy Avon at this point.
Evil Knievel, Avon.
There's a nice dig from Dana too. How can we refuse, Avon? You are the dominant male, aren't you?
Yeah, and he just smiles. He knows
we had a bit. We moved on from it, but there was another little line where Servalan says, "Try to remember." Oh no, Tarrant says, "Try to remember, I have a gun," and Servalan says, "Actually, no." I just like
She's
that
like, "I have the gun," and then Tarrant's like, "Well, if you kill me, then you can't get off the planet. She gets in the sand. Will have no use for you and kill you." And then she's like, "Well, I still have my pilot." And Tarrant's like, "Damn, you got me there."
Yeah.
How do they resolve that?
Tarrant shoots the windows.
Oh yeah, Tarrant figures out how to defeat the sand and shoots the windows out with the gun.
Mm.
How many bullets did Tarrant bring? He fired off a couple shots at Reeve.
More than 4.
Yeah, more than 4.
He's got a special gun belt that he got from Dev or Del or... No, he's Del, isn't he? He got from his brother, Dieter. He got a special gun belt from Dieter.
Good old Dieter, the identical twin.
He mentions in this episode how Servalan let Dieter die.
Yes, that was interesting too, wasn't it?
You'd think they'd give him motivation to pull that trigger when he's got the gun up freaking inch from her head.
You know what I think a lot of this is? I think a lot of it is Servalan's like, all right, kill me. And he's like, nah, I can't. I mean, he even says that, earlier on, I prefer moving targets. I think it's just maybe he thinks it's too easy. He
So he's like Dita. He's doing the same thing that got Dita killed.
Yeah, exactly, actually.
Or the sand's affecting him and won't let him kill her because it wants them as breeding stock.
Yeah.
Maybe. But yeah, Avon's insane, asinine plan is to fly the Liberator Scorpio into the storm, because he's like, if we just like rouse up the storm a bit, it'll start raining. And everyone's like, yeah, that makes total sense. I'm like, no, that makes no sense.
They do it and it works.
Like, what evidence do you have that this is going to work?
Maybe things are different at a certain level on the planet. Who knows?
I mean, maybe, but Avon has like no scientific evidence that this is going to work at all.
He shook his magic 8-ball.
No.
By magic 8-ball, I mean those probability squares.
Should I fly into the clouds? Shakes ball. Answer unclear. Ask later.
All right, let's do this.
Let's do this. What are the 8-ball?
It's like, no, definitely don't. It's like, all right, let's go.
What did the 8-ball say, Avon? It said yes.
Just trying to kick it behind like a desk. What 8-ball?
Actually, Slave looks a bit like an 8-ball.
Yeah.
Hey, Slave, should we fly into the storm? No, Master.
Should we fly into the sun?
Yeah. Should we fly into the sun?
As you wish, Master.
Well, Slave, the reason why they figure out technology doesn't work so well on the planet is because Slave's like having trouble, and they're like, Slave, are you okay? And he's like, no, could someone take over for me? And they're like, okay. Then Slave's like, thank you, Master. I'm going to go to sleep now.
Yeah, Slave needs his rest just as much as anyone else. That's why Zen failed. They kept him working like a dog.
He could have taken a rest when he wanted to, like he did in that one episode where he just stopped telling them everything, and they were like, Zen, what are you doing?
But anyway, Avon's plan totally works.
As it must, because there's 10 minutes left in the episode and it needs to be resolved ASAP.
So the sand gets...
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact that he is making it rain, the idea, if you can get it to rain, the idea is very sound. Get it to rain and the sand starts to dissolve a bit.
Right. And they say also that, the planet produces the sand, or it itself is the sand, so... The sand will come back, but it's just a window of time that they have where it's not around.
I mean, that was interesting earlier where Tarrant said, have you actually felt any wind while you've been on this planet? And they realised, no, they hadn't. It's actually the sand moving itself around.
Right, that's a very cool moment, especially because you can hear the wind blowing throughout this entire scene. And so then they go like, no, wait, that's not the wind. It's the sand moving around.
It's the sand crawling around. And
again, it's that mystery, oh, okay, we've figured it out now.
Mm-hmm. Well, then Tarrant beams up, and they're like, so Tarrant? And he's like, oh, I met a girl. And they're like, oh, Tarrant, who was it? And he's like, Servalan.
This is that moment.
What the hell?
And he clears the flight deck. Data gets a half, walks off. Sulin gets a half and walks off.
Even Villa does.
I don't know why Sulin cares, really, but...
Even Villa gets mad at him. Villa, who hasn't cared much about really most of their
Villa's
problems.
just here for the booze at this point.
Yeah. Even he recognizes, like, hey, man, not cool.
Not cool. Yeah. Avon sticks around and he's like, so what'd she tell you about Keller? And he's like, oh, he was like a lover of hers. And Avon's like, well, did you believe it? And he's like, just as far that I needed to get out of there, basically, he says.
Tries to play it off. He's in his mind. He's like, "Oh wait, that could have been a total lie. Guess I'll just pretend I thought of that as soon as I heard it."
But then we cut to Servalan.
We find out that it wasn't really a lie. Well, that's how I read it.
That's how I read it too.
I read it as she for sure knew Keller, whether or not they were, romantically involved. And I think they probably were. I just don't think it's 100% confirmed.
I mean, she says he's her lover. I mean, that's fairly intimate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a...
Contrarian.
In some ways, yes. But I'm also just extremely skeptical about all this stuff, so,
You're just extremely skeptical about love in general, Keon. Open your heart.
And realize that this mass murderer has room in her own heart for love.
Yes. If Servalan can love, so can you, Keon.
even Hitler had a wife, so...
It was a girlfriend. I don't think
but
they actually got married, but...
they got married on the day that they died.
Ah, so they were husband and wife for sub 24 hours, yeah.
And then it all went badly in the bunker. So I think you can be a psychopath, sociopath, and have one person that you care about, or maybe one person that meets your needs.
Yeah, I feel like there'd be a debate there about whether you actually care about if you don't necessarily feel emotion, if you actually care about them, if it's just someone who fulfills your needs, who you keep around.
So from that perspective, I agree with Keon that she might be saying he was her lover, but to her that might have just meant someone she could have a fun time with, not someone who she felt any affection for.
Yeah,
The other thing to realise is this is 1981, and the idea of having a lover in this at that time it probably meant a lot more than what if you use that word today.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's quite a strong word for that time.
Right.
It's interesting. The wiki, because I spoiled this long ago, this moment, the wiki paints this as a very defining moment for Servalan. As far as I remember, and I think this is on the wiki page, Blake 7 wiki page for Servalan, they sort of paint this like Keller's death was what spurred Servalan on to her ambition, which is kind of in this episode, but I guess it was. Yeah, I guess it was in this episode, come to think of it.
Well, she keeps saying after Don Keller, then Power became her lover.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get a nice little bit of closure when she breaks the glass and the water dissolves the last bit of sand in the ship.
Right. I was kind of wondering why that sand is even still there on that ship.
Wanted to way off the planet, way to propagate itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'd think her and Chazgo would have swept it out at the door before they took off.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, should you keep the sand
hiding.
around just for this dramatic moment, Servalan? Or
Maybe they kept it around like they kept the moon disc, as a pet.
that moon disc never showed up again.
It died with Callie. Probably died before Callie.
Yeah, probably
actually.
died long before Callie did. Bet it died between episodes that week, and Callie just kind of brushed it under the rug and was like, "Hey, where's your moon disc, Callie?"
I go, well, what moon disc? I didn't bring any moon discs.
I think the sand came in her stiletto shoes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's what I'm sticking with.
Classic stilettos. That's the biggest reason not to wear stilettos. It's damn vampire sand is going to get on your ship and kill everyone.
Yeah, I think they'd say that on the box when you buy some stiletto shoes. I think they say, don't wear down to planets with vampire sand.
Don't wear to Planet Vern.
Yeah.
I'm going to explain, like, what it just don't wear these on Vern.
Yeah.
So, what do you think Terry Nation would do with this idea?
Who wants to go first? Because in my head, this whole episode is completely overhauled. And so.
Wow, I'm the complete opposite. I think it would be. This might just be because I just thought of this like 2 minutes ago. But I think it wouldn't be that different. So why don't you go first? Or
Argy can go first.
Yeah.
Maybe we should let our guest go first.
Yeah, we should do that.
Is this a new thing that you've been doing?
Yeah, it's called the How Would This Episode Be Different If Terry Nation Wrote It segment.
Oh, I haven't caught the last couple of your segments. How would I think it'd be different? That's a big question. I'm going to go last.
Okay, well, so my envisioning of this is I sat down as soon as the episode finished. I was like, man, vampire sand, that is too high concept for Terry Nation. Terry Nation would just have it be an actual virus on this planet, number one. And number two, Servalan would far and away not be the main character of this episode at all. Servalan for Terry Nation was always a villain for the Liberator crew. In every episode that Terry Nation wrote, it never seemed like Servalan was a main character to Terry. She was always a kind of a secondary character who served primarily as an antagonist for the crew. And so in that aspect, I don't think this episode's focused on Servalan at all. I'm not entirely sure if Keller would even be her romantic interest. He just might be someone that she is after for her new federation in this episode. And I think that vampire sand would just be regular sand and some sort of techno virus because Terry Nation loved technology more than ecology is not the word, but like
Nature.
nature, I guess. So maybe the vampire sand is vampire sand, but it's like because it's infested with nanobots or something. I don't think the vampire sand just being vampire sand is a Terry Nation thing.
Yeah, I actually I agree with that. I do think Terry Nation is interested in telling an ecological story. The Daleks itself, in some ways, is an ecological story. But I definitely agree that he's infusing this with technology rather than like
Yeah.
fantasy or whatever, mysticism or whatever. I definitely think the nanobots idea is something he would go for, if not
Yeah.
exactly that, then something like it. But I do think Terry Nation often writes romance into his stories.
No, I'm not disputing that. I think that it wouldn't come into this story because I don't think he considered Servalan that kind of character.
Well, there was like, Aurak, where she and Travis were a little bit more central. But not to this extent, but... And I do think Terry Nation eventually comes around and is like, look at this character's romantic backstory or tragic backstory, with like Avon and stuff like that.
Yeah, but he always did that with the Liberator crew. Like, whenever Servalan shows up, any of these episodes where Servalan gets major character development, I think, in my opinion, are written by people other than Terry Nation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I can see Terry Nation kind of writing this really similarly. Maybe at the end, turns it around and is like, well, that scene at the end is like her, I don't know, snickering of like, I never loved Keller or something, something less cheesy than that, but something along those lines.
This is what I think. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I noticed in this episode, and I think this is Tanith Lee again, everyone actually got something to do. So Sue
I see where this is going already.
So Sulin was talking on the Scorpio about everything. Tarrant got a lot to do. Dana got a little bit to do, not as much as the others, but she did get to go down to the planet. She did get to have some lines when she came back to the ship. Villa gets drunk. So everyone gets stuff to do. Terry Nation was writing it. Avon would get more screen time. He would go down to the planet and flirt with Servalan. Not everyone would get lines, so some would be lineless, probably Sulin. Dana would stay on the Liberator and Villa would go down with Avon. Avon would work out the sand without even having his little computation square. But I think at some stage Dana would have a meeting with Servalan, so I think she'd come back up on the ship. Then they'd have a standoff and then somehow she'd escape again. That's what I think.
Yeah, I could see that. Terry Nation was fond of his rivalries, especially with Blake and Travis.
Yeah, there's pretty much nothing I can say to, I think that's pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
So I think Argy should take over this segment for us because a lot of times we struggle with what Terry Nation would do.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to refute any of that. I think I agree with it.
It's fairly easy to go that Terry Nation wasn't that good a writer or that didn't have that many ideas. But I've been reading more and more about how he operated within Blake 7, and he came up with all the first series on his own. So yes, it got fleshed out by Chris Boucher, but those original ideas are actually tricky to come up with. So I think he can sometimes get overlooked a little bit.
I mean, I think I described Terry Nation once as a mediocre writer with some gems, and Chris Boucher as a great writer with some busts. So.
Yeah, that could be the way forward.
The way forward.
The way forward. Yeah.
I mean,
so I'd say this was definitely Servalan's episode. So she got the most screen time. We learned about a past love of hers, and we saw her cozy up to Tarrant. Jax got to play a range of emotions: smug, menacing, smouldering, distraught, and I thought she did a good job with all of them. As I said a moment ago, just about everybody got screen time, which seems to be a hallmark of Tanith Lee's episodes. In Sarcophagus, everyone got something to do. And I really like the mystery aspect to this story. But finally, watching this episode is a great way to remember Jacqueline Pearce, who died earlier this year, because it is her episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. This is, by far and away also, I think, one of her best performances as Servalan too, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is.
At least that we've seen so far. I'm sure she shows up at least once more before the season is out. I don't know, though, so don't take my word for that.
Yeah, I'm not. I actually don't know either.
And Tarrant finally gets stuff to do rather than just stand around and
he gets stuff to do, and once again completely mucks everything up. Yes, my favorite. It's the
at this
take
point,
a dump all over Tarrant week on Zenith.
At this point, really, like the more Tarrant does, it's like you can't take you don't want to blink. You don't want to see what Tarrant's gonna
Yeah,
screw
you
up
just want to
next.
see how Tarrant's going to mess it up this
Yeah,
week.
exactly.
But he's quite there's quite a bit of seduction going on with him getting the food, and then they lay out the table and they have a bit of a drink, and it's he does a good job in that area, I think.
I mean, he certainly knows his way around, what would you call that, practical matters?
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
But
it's
as we know,
Servalan who he should have just shot right then and there.
It's true. On the other hand, it's Servalan who could actually... I feel like Servalan's actually the one in control of the whole
Yeah.
situation, manipulating Tarrant through this whole thing.
You see, that's Tarrant's job. Tarrant's job is to look decorative.
My man.
He achieves that. He achieves that in every episode. He just has to look decorative, and that's that.
Well, there was
do
like...
anything
What was it?
important or
In
sensible.
Assassin, I think, where he like tried to challenge Avon for command, but then they get on the assassin ship and Avon comes up with this completely, like, according to Sergeant Drano, insane plan, and Tarrant's like, that's the best idea you ever had, Avon. Try to suck up to Avon after he realized he's completely been messing everything up for weeks.
Oh dear. So that reminds me of someone who tries to suck up to people all the time. No, it's gone out of my head.
I mean, I think that's about it for me. I think this is far and away the best episode of Series D so far.
I think it's up there for me. I don't know if it's the best.
It's this or Rescue. I mean,
I'd have to think about it. Rescue. I'd have to look at all the episode names because I'm like blanking on all the names right now because they're all one word and incredibly difficult to remember. But I liked Assassin too.
This is my favourite of season D.
Well, maybe we're finally hitting that upswing everyone's been talking about, how when it becomes
episode
great.
9.
I mean, Games wasn't bad either.
It wasn't bad, but
Yeah, I liked Games.
I mean, I wouldn't say Games was great. You haven't heard our episode on Games yet, but that's an interesting episode, I think. Especially when we suddenly, like halfway through, realize how many Greek myths are just drawn into that episode. This is probably a good time to transition into... we do have an email from Sergeant Drano this week, so if you'd like to join us to respond to that, Argy,
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll go ahead and read it here. All right, Sergeant Drano, subject line, Sand. Hey guys, so Sand. I really like this one. I love the way this episode starts from the Federation perspective. It almost feels like an episode of Star Trek where Servalan and her intrepid crew go on a mission to investigate some mysterious planetary anomaly, only it's Mirror Universe Star Trek where the Federation is all bad guys and assholes. Hey, maybe Blake 7 is actually set in Mirror Universe Star Trek, huh? So I guess this must be the new Federation Navy uniform, the red and black. Not terrible, I guess, but also not thrilled by it. Investigator Reeves uniform, though, ugh. Hey, shout out to the clip guns with their interchangeable ammo types, percussion bullets for the win. Lol, Tarrant is the worst, sends Dana back and chooses to go alone in spite of knowing he has no idea what he's dealing with, walks into a gunfight with Investigator Reeve. Reeve totally gets the drop on him, then later Servalan easily takes his gun away from him. I love the reveal that Servalan loved Keller. Terrific acting by Jacqueline Pierce in this one. Some of her best, I think. Good mystery, too. Maybe the title gives it away a little bit, but I thought the suspense and tension was built on pretty well throughout. I think they did a pretty good job making the green planet of sand feel like a real place, too. Sulin stays up on Scorpio, but she gets some pretty great stuff to do with callbacks to the death of Callie and the destruction of the Liberator. Lol, Villa sitting there on Scorpio and doesn't notice his feet buried in a big pile of cat litter. Servalan, oh Tarrant, I'm just the girl next door. Tarrant, if you were the girl next door, I'd move. Servalan, where would you move to? Tarrant, Tarrant next door. I have to admit, that is some good dialogue. Avon's probability square is interesting, although it's hard to make sense of it. A bunch of different colored tiles that he moves around, which say stuff like earth, water, nitro, sand, and light. So Tarrant figures it all out and information dumps us. Looks like sand has an additional side effect. It dramatically boosts the intelligence of people with man perms. All in all, a pretty great episode, I think. I will give it 6 out of 7. Sergeant Drano, Station 7, the door. I think he hit on pretty much everything that we hit on this episode, actually.
Yeah.
The uniforms, although he disliked Investigator Reeves' uniform,
Not
which
like
is
metallic but flexible.
Gonna have to disagree with you there, Drano. And
I liked that uniform, I have to say.
yeah, and so did I. Well, it was really good, actually.
Yeah, I did too.
I like how he takes a big dump all over Tarrant, though.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're a true Zenith fan.
Yeah.
Actually, the point about Dana going down with Tarrant and Tarrant just sending her back, even though he doesn't know what he's going to be up against. Yeah, he makes a good point there.
Yeah. I mean, Tarrant legitimately sees Dana get shot in the arm and then decides that it's a good idea to, like, because we forgot to mention, Avon's like, do you want someone to replace Dana with you, Tarrant? And Tarrant's like, no, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, see, he had to, though. He had to do that because otherwise he wouldn't be left, from a story perspective, he wouldn't be left with Servalan on his own if he hadn't have done that.
right, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a bad decision on Tarrant's part.
Oh, of course. It was a Tarrant decision.
It was a Tarrant
It was a
decision.
Tarrant-able decision.
I was going to say that. You beat me to it. And the good dialogue as well, you know. And the polarly square. Also the man perm.
I didn't see, Dylan, you mentioned this. I thought you were kind of just joking, but you can actually see the words on the squares.
Yeah.
I didn't notice
Yeah,
that.
you
I didn't
can.
read any of them.
And they're just single words that say, like, earth, water.
Oh,
Like, yeah.
huh. All right.
So the man perm means that you've got another use for a dead Tarrant, which is a mop.
Oh, God.
So
Yo.
it's very important.
Yo. What are you mopping up? The blood from when you killed Tarrant?
No, oh, well, I can't tell you anything else at this stage, so we should just leave it there. I will leave it up to your imagination.
Great.
as to,
Have we found out how much Villa weighs yet? Or are we still yet to
2
find
weeks.
out? Okay,
2
2
weeks.
weeks.
The episode that Sergeant Drano is going to be on. That's why he picked that one.
Nice.
Is that why you picked that one specifically?
so,
Because you
yes.
find out how much Villa weighs?
Yep.
Yes, Argy, you're actually the first of like a long string of crossovers we have. You're the what is it?
First
best.
of
The first of
Three?
3 in a row.
yeah.
So, and for that, we thank you for starting us off on such a good note because I really enjoyed having you on again.
Yeah, definitely.
That's no problem. Thank you so much for letting me chat about Blake 7 with you.
Yeah, no, we love it. I'd offer for
sad
you to
that
be
it's
on
gonna
again,
finish.
but like we're almost at the end. We don't have enough episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you will appear again on Trust Your Doctor. So
I will.
this is not the end of RG's appearances on Decorative Vegetable Podcasts.
But I am sad that we're coming to the end of Blake 7. It's been a great ride listening to
we
you
are too.
two talk about it.
It's bittersweet.
It's bittersweet. I think it's nice to realize that a break is in sight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I'm gonna miss this. We've met a lot of interesting people doing Zenith.
Yeah.
For sure. You included, of course.
Cheers.
And it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
We've still got episodes to go yet, so there's no need to.
We have episodes to
we
go
don't have
yet.
To be too sad. Yeah.
I think I'm going to cry on the finale episode. Zenith is ending. Actually, I don't know
Make
if
sure
I'll
there's
go
no
that
stray sand around. Gotta get it with your tears.
far. Yeah, I just got to make sure that the office is clean. All right, so in the week since we recorded with RG, we got a couple of comments on the website from Jurgen that we're going to go ahead and read and respond to. So all these are on, episode 46, which was last week, which would be games. And it's split over 3 comments, but I'm just going to read them straight through, and then we'll just respond to all of them when we're done, because they're all kind of linked. Hey guys, I enjoyed Linus's performance myself. Hope you like her in future episodes. There are some crackers still to come, I think. Yes, Dana does have less to do. Haven't finished listening to the podcast, but surely you agree Gisette knows how to do her own stunts. It looks cool. What is the vanishing act you're referring to? Please don't get it, I am afraid. Thanks for continuing to cover Blake 7 like this, even though you think it's time for it to come to an end. I always enjoy listening to a fellow Cancerian, and to your dulcet tones as well, Keon. More about Linus Barber. I think she just wanted to give a cool-headed, no-nonsense performance. My interpretation is that she didn't mean to put a lot of effort into the slap, as she obviously didn't consider Piri important enough. I love the line about slapping a historical woman. Sulin might have had a very low opinion of the, quote, sweet little girl, unquote, as Dana calls her at the end. A sitcom moment, perhaps, but quite funny. She does, however, warm to poor old Nebrock, something I liked for the character. Interesting comments about the editing. There was supposed to be more dialogue between Servalan and Verlis, but the actors kept fluffing their lines. There's some hilarious footage on YouTube.
Yeah, Series D has a lot of behind-the-scenes / like blooper reel type stuff that you can find on YouTube.
Right. The vanishing act was mainly because I didn't know where the hell Dana was during the whole episode.
I don't even remember what that's referring to.
Well, I said that she pulled a vanishing act because I had no idea where she was for the whole episode.
Okay.
Because I could not for the life of me remember. Still cannot for the life of me remember where Dana was during games. Unfortunately. But that's all right, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember either.
But other than that, thank you for your comments, Jürgen. We always appreciate hearing from you and all our other fans. And basically, we're asking for our fans to, and even if you're not a fan of Zenith, you can email us, I guess.
Yeah, anyone. Email, Facebook, Twitter, or leave a comment on the website.
Just, kind of pitching your fantasy version of Blake 7, like fantasy football, but for Blake 7. Who do you want playing the characters? Who would you have doing scripts, script editing, producer, whatever you want?
Story ideas. And you can set this in an alternate history where Series E happened, I guess, or like a reboot or something. You can do whatever you want. Or
like from the 80s, like in the era of Blake 7, if you could cast anyone, who would do it? If you could draw from any era, who would you cast?
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want with it, really. Like, it's very open-ended, and it's open-ended intentionally.
Right.
And on our final episode, which we'll be releasing the week after The Way Ahead, we'll be releasing one final wrap-up episode for Zenith. On that episode, we'll be going over people's fantasy kind of Blake 7. We'll be pitching our own as well.
Yeah. And just reflecting on the podcast,
just reflecting
probably.
on the podcast and the show and looking back fondly on what we've done. Looking back fondly on how we burned ourselves out.
So again, the 4 sort of channels you can pitch your idea on, or email, Facebook, Twitter, and leaving a comment on the website.
Oh, but anyway, if you would like to email us in the final moments of Zenith, you can email
dying
us.
Breaths.
Yes, dying breaths. You can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Sand and Tanith Lee and whatever you want. You can reach us. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Zenith, a Blake 7 podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Gold with a guest appearance by frequent correspondent Maurice. But until then, thank you again, Argy.
Thank you again, Argy, for being on.
No worries.
Always love it.
And until then, the end.